Hey, Quants, just going to do a quick update on the market today. I did want to sit down and play some games on the Sui Play device. I might still try to do that later, but I have some errands that I need to run today, so I'm not going to be doing that early in the morning. And I did want to get a video out just to make sure I get one out today. Also, the market's been quite interesting. We've been seeing a bit of a downtrend. I believe the last video I mentioned, if you were just using closes and Gann analysis, obviously if you're using the Gann swing based off of the close, then you could argue that we were still in an uptrend. That was potentially just a justification, but obviously price has continued after a bounce, small bounce here. Price has continued to move down. So what I want to go back to here is I want to go back to the master strategy, which is the primary strategy that I apply to the market when I'm discretionary trading. And I say discretionary trading because I will utilize divergences in conjunction with the moving averages when I'm utilizing this particular strategy. So the way that I like to use this strategy is primarily based off of the slow moving averages. That's going to be the 200 EMA and the 200 SMA. And so if I zoom out, just conceptually, if I'm looking at the market, it's color coded so that you essentially have an idea of if you're bullish or if you're bearish on the macro time frame. And without zooming into some of these time frames, we had this time from basically January of 2023 when both of the moving averages sloped up and turned green and was essentially an indication to start being bullish on the market. Playing just off of the 200s, the idea, if you have an opinion of the opinion that you're in the bottom of a macro trend and you think markets are going to be turning around, and I'm saying opinion in this case because this is where you can apply some discretion to this particular strategy, then you would be buying when price moves back to the 200. So if I'm doing that, you would be buying. Let me see if this thing works. Does that work? Nope, not the way that I wanted it to work. There was a highlighter that disappears. So if you buy here, I think this should disappear. You buy here. You're not going to buy here, although that potentially could have been a buy. Obviously, I mean, this is hindsight, so very easy to be biased on when you're looking in hindsight. So here is a potential buy time frame. Here's a potential buy time frame, and then actually, if you're of the opinion that the market is going to continue moving higher, then this would also be a potential buy time frame. So it looks like those are not disappearing, but that's fine. I'll just back them up. And so with this particular strategy, that is something that I like to use. Since I'm of the opinion that we're getting closer to the end of the market, I'm not actually purchasing or making any buys at this particular point. But the idea would be to buy when you get a touch at the 200 EMA and or a touch at the 200 SMA. And we got those both over the last few days here. So if you're of the opinion that the market could go farther, and even in the context of the 4-year cycle, I'm of the opinion that we would continue to move with coupling that also with the 18.6-year land cycle theory. I'm of the opinion that we will see the market continue to move up. This has been I would say a minor correction in the context of what Bitcoin has historically done, but obviously considering the size of the numbers, since we're now working with an asset that's over $100,000, the nominal value of that is quite large because we were at 126,000 just a few days ago, and we dropped all the way back down to about looks like $103-ish thousand. So that is over a $20,000 move. So obviously the number percentage-wise, not that big of a deal. Nominal value could be considered quite large. So back to the point about this strategy, if you wanted to play just the 200s in a way that I described, one way you could test out this theory is to plug it into the skeleton key. Again, the skeleton key is available on Quant Prime, on the Quant Prime website, or the Quant Alchemy Crown Quant Alchemy website, which is will be linked in the description if you want to find that information. And I've already set this up just as a simple test because, well, let's just get into it now. So if I enable it, what we're going to see here is we're going to see the buy here. I did put a few extra filters on this, and so the filters that I applied on this, I'm buying if the price crosses below the 200 EMA, and so that would be the low, and then it closes above it, that would trigger a buy. Similarly, if we have a low that crosses below the 200 SMA and then closes above it, that would also trigger a buy. So it looks like this potentially should have been a buy. And there's a reason it's not purchasing, but let's just double check here. So we have the low at 107,464, and we have the EMA price is at I see it there, but I'm not able to read it. It's, yeah, so 107,407. So it looks like the low in this case was, the EMA was just a little bit lower than that. So that wouldn't have triggered the price. However, the way I have it set up, it wouldn't have triggered it anyways because I'm only allowing pyramiding of 2 buys, and we triggered a buy back at this point when we had touched it back here. And so that is not the tool that I want right now. And so now we have our entries, right? So we're going to, we have basically the idea is to, if we touch the 200 EMA, we're going to make a buy. If we touch the 200 SMA, that's going to trigger a buy. So when are we going to sell? I defined the sell to be if we close below the 200 SMA, because that's starting to indicate that we're losing the macro trend in this particular strategy. However, a simple close could also be a fake out. So I've applied a 3% offset to this, meaning that the price has to close below 3%, below the 200 SMA, and then that will trigger a sell. And these are the statistics since November 30th, 2014 that we see. It's profitable. You don't get a lot of trades. Obviously, there would be a lot. You could potentially trade more frequently to get more profitable. But at the end of the day, the point of this is to prove that you can use some simple strategies and come up with very simple ideas. You can test these ideas out by putting them into the skeleton key, which again is available through the Quant Prime program, which you can get through Crown Quant Alchemy, linked in the description, and test these ideas out. Now, I mentioned this before. When I zoom out, I expect this to happen, what you're going to see is when it touches the 200s, usually it's not always just on the daily time frame. You're not going to see just a touch and bounce and it's done, right? Usually you're going to see it float around that 200 EMA. And so you get a ton of churn here. And that's in the context of trend strategies. Trend strategies can really be problematic in a choppy market or a sideways market because there is no trend, but you're going to oftentimes be getting these buy sell signals quite frequently in that market. And so something you might want to do if you're interested in picking this up and trying it out, testing out some other ideas, you might want to put some filters on here to identify if the trend is choppy or not. One of the things that I've been playing with that is a Hurst exponent. So trying to apply a Hurst exponent to something like that. I didn't plug it in here, so I'm not going to go into it, but there is a lot of other potential indicators that you could apply to this to maybe filter out some of these trends. So another thing that you might just consider doing, and I haven't done this yet, so we're just going to experiment here and see how it goes. You might just want to play a higher time frame. Since you're working with the 200 EMAs, you might want to just see how far that goes. Now, obviously, this isn't going to work out, be super practical in this case because you're ultimately just going to be buying very few times. So we only have 10 trades. You can't really make much basis off of that. I'm not too surprised about that because in the context of Bitcoin, it doesn't have that much history, and we're looking at a weekly time frame and basing that off at 200 EMAs. So, yeah, you're going to need a lot of time to see if this actually works out, and that is probably going to be too slow for most people. So, back on the 24-hour time frame or daily time frame. Okay, so just wanted to kind of go over that, and we'll see how the market plays out. It looks like it's kind of pulling up here. If you're looking at this in a very simplistic way, you've got an ABC potentially here. I don't think that's actually going to be that valid because there's no other prior Elliott wave stuff going on here. But if you are using Gann swing analysis, your potential buy target would be when on the next up bar if you're being aggressive. And so if you're being aggressive, you might want to enter if we start putting in a high over the previous high. If you want to just follow a very basic strategy basic Gann swing strategy, when this previous high is broken, of course we won't see that happen until close to 116,000. Then that would be the next potential Gann swing opportunity if you're just doing very basic Gann swing analysis. But I personally will say I am hoping to see the 200 moving averages hold for this particular strategy. And just to clean up the chart, I'm going to get rid of that. And it does look like we're getting a nice strong close close to the SMA. Well, that should be well within the 2% or 3% range that I used in that prior strategy. So that obviously is just speculation. We have no idea what the market's going to do. The market will do, as we say, the market will do what it's going to do. So, but as it stands, closing a little bit closer to the 200s, ideally above the 200 would be really great. Then this would look like a nice bottoming candle. But of course, we'll need to see some more candles to see if it actually ends up resulting to the upside. So, alrighty, that's going to be it for today. If I do have more time, I will get on and I'll play with the Sui Play device. And I do have, I did want to share, I have another strategy concept idea that I've been working on. I did finish this indicator. This is just a simple indicator that has an idea of let's buy when it goes up X% and let's sell when it goes down X%. And then there's a couple of filters that I applied to that because we need to be able to identify when do we start buying again, right? So when do we pick a top for when we start buying again? And I will go over that in a later video. So just something to look forward if you're interested in that. And I hope you have a good weekend since it's Friday. Peace, quants.